I found that what the young people have done so far, they have played a good role for the revolution in Egypt. It's good. But did they do really, are they doing really something active to politics and to building Egypt? You know, what they have done, just going to riots, they refused the wrong things which was going on, and that's it. But there is no active role to the youth. And here I cannot blame them, because I have two things to say. Politically, all of us, even our generation, are politically illiterate. I think the biggest mistake which Nasser has done is dissolving the parties which were really strong in Egypt, Wafd, Saadi, etc. Instead of building a socialist party, which advocated his ideas, he dissolved all the other things. What is the result? The result is that we don't have parties. We have a lot of names. I don't remember them. I don't know, 70, 80, etc. Not only that, but even the few parties which have built, I think in the 70s we said that, like Tagamma, like Al-Watani, etc. You'll find that I don't consider them political parties. Why? If they disagree, you know, few of them, they disagree among each other. They separate and build another party. What they want is just to be influential in the party. Not what they do care for is the benefit of Egypt. Want to do something for Egypt as they used to do before the 52 revolution, and they stand against the king, etc. Therefore, what we have, there is no area for the young people, and even for us, you know. At a certain time, I tried to join one of the parties at the beginning, and I have attended several meetings, and then I said, no, it's not my place in that. Here in Egypt, it's an American talk, but the politics is a dirty game, but it's really, this applies to what's going on in Egypt. The second thing, not only politics, just okay, can you do something in work and build in Egypt? I would say no, and it's not the mistakes. It is the mistakes of our generation, of the education itself. The education in Egypt is deteriorating. It is bad to start with, and it is deteriorating, you know. And here you have, we always have learned, and we teach our students, human investment is the most important things. If you just build good generation, they can make technology, they can make really advantage in that. But what I want to say is that this, it was to my really surprise when I was in Illinois, I was with them. What has been going on in the States? I was in 2010 at Rutgers, and now 2014, only 4 years at Illinois. It's the students, most of the students are from Southeast Asia. The very few are from the States, and I want to comment on what Buddha said when there was an election, you know, the young people have played a really small role. And I asked the students in my class, how many have not voted? And there were quite a few, they raised their hands. And my question was like, why? Why you didn't vote? And their answer was, we didn't know those who want just to participate and coming. They didn't pay any effort to understand who is what. This was not America. This was not the States, and to say we have to go there. What I want to say is that young people, we should do something to them to be able to have really a role in building the state. All the blame is on us, the generation, not on them. They are on the receptive end now. And if we cannot succeed in building good political parties, not everyone wants to build the party they give it, and when they just won't just disagree, they make another party. No, there should be rules and legislation. What does it mean to have a political party? If you don't do that, and if you don't improve the education in Egypt, I don't think we don't have to blame the young people, because they will not be able to play really effective role in Egypt. All what they can do, go to riot and that they think this is all they can do. They shout, etc. But just they can say something today, tomorrow they say something differently. And this is not what we want. Thank you.
Important comment there. Lots of issues about education, lots of issues about the responsibility, our own responsibility, the responsibility of the youth. Perhaps I would like to have other experiences, either from the Arab world, Tunisia, Algeria, and Europe and beyond. Saad.
Thank you, Lord. I want to take advantage of the comment Karima made and the presence of Gouda as an activist, as a former minister, and as a witness to what has been happening to the American left, since he was a leftist, in a leftist party. And in my own teaching, there was always agonizing something about the left. A lot of idealism in the left area, in Europe, in America, and of course in Egypt. But the very idealism of the left had led to a splintering tendency. What Karima was referring to about people always splitting and making their own parties. So much so that we have in Egypt over 100 registered political parties. Any concerned activist, political scientist, scholar can probably would be hard pressed to remember even 10 of the 100 registered political parties. Many of us would only recognize 3, 4, 5, maximum 6, but not over that. And therefore, the challenge, again, because I want to take advantage of Buddha's presence here, that splintering tendency, especially among the left, has been responsible for the hijacking of the Egyptian revolution. Once by the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamists, and second by the military. And part of the blame, in my opinion, goes to the Egyptian left. And its inability to galvanize the potential of youth, because youth usually, as the saying would go, if you are under 30 and you are not a leftist, then you are heartless. لا قلب لك. If you are over 40 and still a leftist, then you are mindless. لا عقل لك. Does this apply to the Egyptian left as well? And if so, how do you see the future? Could the left restore the hijacked revolution? A revolution that has been hijacked once by the Islamists and now by the military? Thank you.
Dr. Dina?
I also have a comment and a question building on what Dr. Saad says. The category of youth, we use it every day in our political discourse in Egypt and also in these various research projects, but I wonder whether it masks some of the real issues and some of the real divisions, because youth are not a homogeneous category. There are leftists, Islamists, liberals among youth. There are real social distinctions, real ideological distinctions. So when we talk about youth in contrast to an older generation, how useful is that in clarifying the issues to us as researchers and analysts. And I have worked on youth issues, and I recognize that it's an important category, and in our daily discourse in Egypt we talk about the state versus the youth, and the youth being the targets of repression and oppression and so forth. But I also wonder whether it's enough, to talk about the issue in terms of young people without going deeper into, their ideological and class distinctions. So this is, my comment and my question. It's something I think about it a lot when I work on youth issues, and not just in regards to this project. Thank you.
Okay, so perhaps I'll come back to my colleagues here, and then we'll have another round.
Ladies first. Okay, I'll try to answer the questions that you have raised. There are certain things that you can generalize on, but there are other issues that you cannot. Okay. There are things that you can generalize on as regards across the board in the 5 countries, but there are sensitivities and other issues that differ from one place to another. Of course, you can generalize on the people, all of them wanted the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, a more open society, and all these things. But I think by the years that has passed since that, you have issues that differs from one country to another. The identity, the priorities of your identity, the role of the religion in the society or in decision making. Things like the economic direction, where are you going from? Some of these countries did not decide yet what really do they want to do. So I advise against generalization more than it should be, and I'm sure my colleagues from the other countries will talk more about that. The problem here sometimes over time, and with all the meetings I attended, there is a growing tendency of competing, I'm talking here frankly, who is better, who has done better, who has achieved more, without putting those achievements or these evaluation within context. What are you talking about? What were the priorities in the first place? The second thing, that the list of priorities keep changing all the time. What was good and people liked very much 3 or 4 years ago are now out of the picture. They don't put it as a priority. So it's a difficult task, but don't generalize. Don't generalize. It doesn't work. But I would also to touch upon what Dr. Dina has said. Yes, you're right. Sometimes I feel, which is a negative feeling, that we're just putting some cliches, to talk about. We're talking about the youth. We're talking about the women. But they're all part of other segments of the society that we're not handling enough. And if you allow me, there was one incident in the parliament, and I was talking about the bylaws. We have more than 400 clauses in the bylaws, and I said there was a line saying, provided that women are adequately represented in the different organs of the parliament. And everyone wanted to take off this line, saying this will be contested by being unconstitutional. And I said, what? You're not even mentioning a percentage or mentioning an obligation. You're just saying adequately. And adequately can be from 1 woman to 101. So, but the fact is when people voted and it went to the state council and came back, this was in 1 second approved that we take off this line. So, and the argument was, but those categories, and I feel very offended when you talk about women as a category, the women, the youth, the cops, the disabled, are given this chance only for once. And I raised something similar to what you're saying, but women are everywhere in those categories. How can you do that? But I agree with you. Sometimes we focus on something and we go in depth or in the details that could make things better. Can I add something about the women in the parliament? We have 89 women, which is the first time in the history of the Egyptian parliament, which constitute 15%. But our colleague who once talked about that women should be dressed respectably. And of course he had what you say, a hard day in front of him. But this is the in-depth thinking, because the same respectable MP 2 days ago was standing saying, and because his name could be used for men and women, and saying, the respectable minister is answering me as if I was a woman. I said, okay, I'll wait. Then he said, and if he thinks that I am a woman, I'm telling him, you are the one who's a woman. I said, oh, so the speaker said, to be deleted from the record. But this is the deep thinking. You take the cliches, we love women, we put them as a flower, we love the youth, we have 140 under 40 years old, so we consider them young, but we avoid going into the distinction and the different classifications.
First, Ken raised an interesting question, and I think the intervention by Dina echoes part of that, as I understand, because it's all about, you know, is it one category you can call youth, whether you are in Egypt, Tunisia, or elsewhere in the world, or within one country, can you deal with youth as one group? Well, it depends. I mean, in demographic terms, youth is an identifiable category. For example, if you take the age range, 14 to 25, which usually is the age bracket for the youth, then yes, whether you talk about any country, anywhere, that's youth. So in demographic terms, yes, but if you deviate from that and look at the issue in sociological terms, or in economic terms, or even in political terms, then you will observe variations both within and across countries.
And that has actually created some people call it identity, youth identity, because their adeptness in dealing with technology is far more stronger compared to the older generation. They're able to tap all sorts of information and to be much more informed. Whether well-informed or ill-informed, they're much more informed than the older generation. So that has created some common space for youth from different countries to belong to. If you want to understand youth, that was Ken's question, do you look at the issue across the region or at the level of each country? I think the issue is not like that. There are some common features of youth everywhere in every region, but there are country variations that one has to pay attention to, and this may this is why the history or the initial conditions, as we term them, become very important. So I would say a combination of two. You have to be mindful of the broader regional context or even global context for that, and about the specific country situation we are dealing with. Karima has put the blame on education for the failure of the youth to engage and be part of the game, if you like. Well, yeah, that partly, this is partly so, but this is also because we are still living in a truly authoritarian society, and a truly authoritarian society, even 5 years on, that doesn't leave much room for the youth. So that's part of it, and I think it's a cultural and political. It is not unrelated to education, of course, but I would like to bring it up as an issue in how your society is structured. meaning that given a certain type of educational system, you can reach a different conclusion depending on how society is being structured. That's how I perceive the issue. Saad raised an interesting point about splintering within the ranks of the left in Egypt, he means. Okay. Let me share with you this interesting divergence between moving towards bigger and bigger entities at the economic level, witness the mergers and acquisitions everywhere. Just we're driving through Mahdi and I wrote the sign of orange. And I said, orange used to be link and used to be Mobnil. Now there is no link, there is no Mobnil. It's only orange, right? And you can say the same thing about Carrefour, which is just sweeping all the small groceries that we used to deal with. So at the economic level, there is this central tendency to go for bigger entities for obvious reasons, technology and economy and all that. But at the political level, you're moving in the opposite direction. That to me is very intriguing, and Saad tried to explain this by the idealism on the part of the youth. Maybe, but my own take on this, Saad, is that if you view Tagamma rather closely, you see that the modalities and mechanisms in operation are no different from the modalities and mechanisms in operation for the Egyptian society as a whole. You have people that call themselves leftists and socialists. However, when it comes to really doing something, saying something, they are captive of the national culture in political and social terms. This is how I view it. It's sad that the left is splintering, and if you look at the composition of the current parliament, for example, and you look how does the left fare in this, very poorly. This at the same time comes at the same time when the facts on the ground, social, economic, culture, and everything, cries for the left to be there and to be the voice of the marginalized and disfranchised. It's a dilemma, and to me, I think the left may be failing its mission, if you like, by this central tendency. It's not only about idealism, it's about everybody aspiring to be a leader. Okay, what is the point if consider an army that has, let's say, 5,000 people with arms to fight, and 4,000 of these are generals. What kind of army, what kind of battles that army can fight? That is the situation of the list at this stage. But I refer to Karima's point earlier that, well, thanks perhaps to what took place in this country after 1952, where because of authoritarianism, people deserted the public political space to other spaces. Let's say sports activities, artistic activities, and religion has also replaced that. Now, I would like to refer to comment on the point that Saad made about the fact that the Egyptian revolution was hijacked twice, first by the Muslim Brothers and then by the army. Yeah, basically I don't disagree, but I would like to situate this in a broader, longer-term context. And the broader and longer-term context is like this. In any process of revolutionary change, from the minute that change starts, in our case, January 2011, until the conclusion of that change several decades down the line, you get this struggle between forces of the revolution and counter-revolutionary forces. And I think now the counter-revolutionary forces in Egypt are in almost full command of the situation. Is that the end of the story? No. As I see it, it's not the end of the story. I see some change unfolding. And here I refer to what's happening at the level of managing the economy. The level of managing the economy right now is so bad in terms of quality and quantity of management that, give it some time, is going to create forces on the ground that will push for change. The issue is complicated by the absence of leadership. And I have no answer to that. Why, until now, there is absence of leadership? Because masses are very important, but they need someone to rally behind. Thank you.
Just 2 points before continuing the discussion. I want to note the arrival of one of our guests, Dr. Amani Andil. Amani Andil has been working most of her life on the terms that she doesn't like very much, civil society. And she prefers to talk about NGOs. But we still, in Egypt, we call her Miss Civil Society, because she is really the specialist on the subject. So, the second point is an apology to my colleague Kamal. I obviously usurped your role as chair of the second panel, but I would like to apologize for that, Kamal. I just continued. You can come and take the responsibility.
You are doing well.
I'm sure you will do well, but perhaps I'll start by giving you the floor to tell something about Algeria. How similar, how different is Algeria from the rest of the Arab world?
I don't like to talk just about Algeria, but about our country.
Yeah.
And
the micro?
this idea of I don't like to talk just about my country, Algeria, but our countries, because we have so many similarities. In a really problem we are facing, which is social change, because it is a social change. It's not only political. It is social change at all levels. So the problem is, I think, that we often forget to take into account a major characteristics of our society, which is a demographical characteristic. They are very young societies. In Algeria, for example, I don't know the other statistics. In Algeria, 50% of the society is aged under 35. So it is a very young society. So now these societies has always been calling and asking for democracy, and you know what happened in these revolutions and so on. But I think that these societies are changing, sure, but the problem is that change is in crisis itself. La crise du changement, we say. But because we think that the change is just a political one. It's not a political one, just a political one. Because when it is just a political one, what could happen is that it can be taken up by a political elite. And then what's happening in Algeria, for example, is that the political elite is the historical one. Because in political terms, history legitimizes in our society, history legitimizes power. So, if you can, we can say that history is remaking itself. And this is a problem, that if we really want change, it shouldn't be just political. It should be at all levels. And in the first start, it should be economical one. In the first stage. Because look at the limits. Look at the limits of the political change. If it's only the receipt we can adopt. In Algeria, as far as we are talking about youth, just 2% of the youth are integrated in political parties. So these political parties are representing who? Nobody else. Just the elite competing for power. Then, if it is the case, then what you can say, peaceful revolutions or violent revolution, whatsoever, is just deviating the goals. Because revolution goes from down to up, but it stays up. It doesn't down. It doesn't go down once again. So it stays up. And that's a problem. That's we say, and I agree with my friend Bahgat when he says, well, we may be expecting another revolution in Egypt. Not only in Egypt, everywhere. In Algeria, in Tunisia, in everywhere. Because the change we are expecting is not mainly this one, because it is somewhere else. Political parties and associations, all these institutions, parliament, are somewhere else, and people are another way. There is a very big gap in terms of integration between these two, let me say, institutions. I think that's the problem. And youth, the problematic of youth is one of this major problematic, if not the central one. Well, you have to stop me, otherwise it will be...
This is well said. Please.
My name is Shehata Albaz.
More than Africa, at least. What we are facing is not social change. It is social restructuring to all our societies. I mean, when we talk about social change, we have to put it within a context. And I think the main element, the contextual element in the world now is the globalization system. We cannot talk about social change in our societies without really addressing what globalization is doing to our societies in terms of restructuring the building of the society itself. And by dividing, breaking down the whole area through different ways. I'm not going to talk about it now, but everybody knows that each country is trying to resist being broken down into smaller entities, like Syria, Iraq, and maybe Egypt they could try on Egypt as well. So what I want to say that we are facing a certain power which is using us. We have been always used through imperialism and everything as an object, but it is becoming even worse now because with globalization we became very weak, we became so confused, and the others know exactly what they want. So if we talk about social change, we have to decide first, what do we want? Who are we? What do we think of ourselves? How do we want to be as a country, as an area, as a region? Now with the Arab countries being divided the way they are now, and actually, you cannot talk about Arab unity or Arab solidarity or anything. You have Africa now. They are beginning again with Africa. While, for instance, you can see that this colonial division between North Africa and the rest of Africa, as we are not African, it is also part of trying to weaken the whole area. So I think we have to think in a more comprehensive way when we talk about what's happening to us. We have to think, because you don't have, when we talk about youth and the value system of the youth, the value system does not come from the air. It comes from the changes in the socio-economic structure in societies. If you talk to young people now and compare it to what we were when we were young, with another socioeconomic structure, you find that we had different mentalities, we had different ideas, we had different aspirations. So I don't know, I think we cannot just have it from outside. We have to put ourselves and our change and our new liberational struggle within a context, within the concept of globalization. We cannot ignore globalization on any level. I can even, if you talk to me about servants, a poor servant, I will tell you how globalization is affecting them. Or a very rich person, I will show you how globalization is affecting them. In our society, we do not have the control over our society within this process of globalization. And we have to put that into context. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Sharif Yunus. I am from the Union for Mediterranean Secretariat, which is based in Barcelona. And thanks, of course, for the invitation to participate in this very interesting debate. Just one major comment that I would like to do, which is basically regarding one of the most persisting challenges facing the young people in the region and also in particular women, which is the employment. We all know that unemployment is definitely one of the major challenges for all of the southern and eastern Mediterranean countries in the region. And we also know that statistics talk about the very low participation rate of women in the labor market. So I believe from the economic perspective, and in order to ensure that those who are unemployed, those who are not in training, those who are not in education, they need to be integrated again into the labor market. Being here in Cairo, in Egypt, I would like maybe to mention that on a yearly basis in Egypt, more than 700,000 enter into the labor market and they are looking for jobs. So this is a challenge that we definitely need to address and need to put solutions, whether to be introduced through a kind of a structural reform on the labor market, whether we are talking about the business environment. These are all a number of factors that definitely I think need to be covered through some concrete policy reforms in the region. And that's why I would like to introduce my question to the speakers, whether do you see a kind of a plan that the countries they have to follow in order to provide people or young people and women with job opportunities in the region, and how we do that, and at the same time how we scale up some successful programs that exist currently in many of the countries, in Egypt, in Tunisia, in Jordan, and Morocco. I'm talking about some programs that I do already. They are working on a very low scale, but the most important thing and the challenging task is basically to upscale, so changing from like 1,000 or 2,000 beneficiaries from the programs into 20, 30,000 and even more. This is the main question I would like to introduce to you. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. I am Sukaina Murawi from Tunisia, and I am member of SAHWA team. And I am representing Kaukar in the Center for Arab Women for Training and Research, working for the Arab countries. Just coming back to the question of our colleague Kent, what is common among the Arab youth, among these countries, these 5 countries and maybe more? We have surveyed and we have qualitative and quantitative data, and I think along today's, the 2 last days, we spoke about the common characteristic. I can say we spoke about frustration, we spoke about exclusion, we spoke about informality, we spoke about discontinuity. I think these are common. And my question is, if really these parities are different from the other part of the world. This is my crucial point. And I think that it is a matter of quantity and not quality. It means that because of the demographic factors, our youth are 60% frustrated, excluded, and so on and so on. In South Europa, they are less. And in North Europa, they are less and less. Because the population is becoming old and old. And maybe we could be the hope to renew the demographic crisis in Europa. But they don't want. And I think that it's another sort of exclusion. It means that for the person who really studied the youth in Europa, at least in South Europa, in the North Mediterranean, I think that we are almost the same characteristic. Maybe the context is different, and the demography is different. But in terms of politics, we are the same also. Youth are not involved in parties. And even if they are involved in parties, they are not voting a lot. Maybe the politics, the life in parties is not very attractive for you in all parts of the world. Youth and women are doing politics in another manner, another way. They are in NGOs, they are at home, they are working in informal sectors, they are in sports, men and less women. And I think that we have to read, they are in culture, they are in artistry, they are in other things, in dancing. I think that we have other movements who really express, they are in social network. I think that we have to read this new expression of politics. We are not in the traditional forms in politics. They are doing the politics in another manner, but they are not linked. The problem is the gap between whom are doing politics with power to have the decision making, as Shehata said, in globalization context, and the youth and women who have no the power to decide, to say that they are deciding. I think that we have to go deeper, and also I appreciate the remark of our colleague, because yes, we have a youth, the Arab youth are diverse also, and even in the same country they live us. But we have other distinctions in terms of social class, of other things, elite and non-elite, and rural and not rural, and so on and so on. And yes, we are trying to go deeper in our SAHWA project, and I think that we are trying to find another paradigm, who is not the labor market paradigm. And I think that all this revolution, change, trying to have some hope, is about this paradigm of the market is everything. Maybe we have to think in another manner, even if we have to think about unemployment and employment and labor market and the good design and how to duplicate, how to enlarge the scale. I think that we are in the heart of the change who is coming from all the world. But we are in the heart of the crisis because the demographic impact, the wealth of the demographic impact. It means that what we have in the Arab countries, and especially in these 5 Arab countries, is just what we will have in the other countries after maybe one decade or less or more.
Last question, perhaps, before I give the floor to my colleagues, and then
there are sometimes contradicting or very different things. But as regards the government in its program that was submitted to the parliament, it talks about unemployment in general terms. It talks about new projects, but there is no specific mention to how we're going to do that for women or for the young people. I'm sure Dr. Gula has more to say on this subject, but I want to say as regards women employment, the informal sector in Egypt is mostly of women who has very small businesses, who are not registered, are not covered by social insurance, and this is spreading all over Egypt. The second point is the women who are supporting their families. According to the average figures, we're talking about 30% of families are supported by women. So I come to the employment itself. The job opportunities currently, and has been for years, are very limited and becoming more difficult to create by the day. So the only way that we could think about creating more job opportunities is more investments. We're opening new venues, whether these are Egyptian investments or foreign direct investments. And I'm not going to go into the circumstances that's surrounding that, or the challenges, the different things that for Egypt is passing through, but at the same time, I don't see a clear vision about what kind of an economy that you're talking about. Are you adopting totally the market economy, or are you have the social dimension inserted? I didn't see much talk about social justice in the program, the government's program. And I worry about you don't get investments, foreign investments, and we understand the difficulties of that, but at the same time, what are you doing for social justice principles, which could secure some of the opportunities that you would like to have equality in getting them for women and for young people. For the current situation, the only thing that could be done that you give equal opportunities. If the number of jobs are limited, make them on efficiency basis, on equal opportunities. And the second thing is rehabilitation programs. Women get less and less of that when they lose their jobs or companies are closed as compared to men. And we go back here to the mindset. People think that if you have to choose between a young man and a young woman, no, let's go for the young man, because he is the one who's going to support his family, because women finds other ways, you know, very small things. And this is dangerous. This is dangerous because you're alienating more the opportunities for women. The second, the last point I would like to mention here is you can create equal opportunities and you can open the door for things, but you cannot force people, whether women, young people, men, whoever, to accept the options that you are giving to them. For example, I'll talk about women, I'm talking about my own family, for example, we're 4 sisters. I'm the only one who's working now. The others have chosen by themselves not to work. But I am with the idea of give them the option, give the opportunities, but don't force the people to choose it. Some people think, no, I'll attend to my family first. Some people like me think, I'll attend to my family and do my job, and others would refuse that. Our problem is open the door for the options, change the mindset so people are not looking at those categories as being specific or for, you know, you have to give them grants or needs. We're talking about the rights approach, not the needs approach. We have, if you establish that, and we go back now to education, mindset and everything, and then you face the challenge of the economy, and I leave this subject to my professor, Dr. Gula, who will tell us how to find those investments, which is very difficult.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I like very much the idea that Shehata tossed in, the need to contextualize. That's very important because it gives you the contours within which you move and also the direction and the speed of movement, if you like. In an attempt to contextualize, I would like to refer to two things. One, the nature of the socioeconomic system that is being put in place in this part of the world. If you take Egypt as an example, all the talk now is about a market economy. Sometimes they say open market economy. In Arabic, سوق مفتوح. As an economist, I fail to understand the meaning of سوق مفتوح. The market is the market, and you either regulate the market or deregulate it if it was regulated, or you just leave it as is. So we talk about free market, for example, where supply and demand will interact and produce the result. So the issue of the choice of the economic system is very crucial in this context, and it actually seeps into the phenomenon of high incidence of female unemployment and also high incidence of youth unemployment in this part of the world. And I think it's a tough choice, and I can see it now in historical terms within the struggle in Egypt between the forces, the revolutionary forces and the counter-revolutionary forces. And as I said now, counter-revolutionary forces in Egypt do have the upper hand. So it means you have to go global. You have to do everything it takes to attract foreign direct investment. In fact, strikingly enough, and he said, the talk is not about foreign direct investment, but investment, period. And we know that investment can either be FDI, foreign direct, and it can be portfolio investment. Portfolio investment is a nasty thing, and it does more harm than good to any economy, particularly economy at the same stage as the Egyptian economy. So even that distinction is not being made between portfolio investment and FDI. So my take on this is the following. First of all, you have to encourage your local productive capabilities. And right now we are at the height of the wheat harvesting season in Egypt. And it really is a very sad scene. Small, poor producers who want to market their wheat, and they just don't find a place to take it to. So the end result is that you are providing a subsidy to them. They are denied that because traders step in, and instead of giving them the peasant, the fillah, 420 pounds an ardab. Ardab is the local Egyptian volume of measurement of volume. They offer them 370 or 380, and then just pocket the rest. So what I'm saying is that Anissa mentioned the glaring neglect of social justice. And I would support this, but add to it that we have to distinguish between redistributive justice, meaning you have a loaf of bread or a cake, and all you're doing is just juggling through among the various social strata of society. That's one thing. The other thing is what I call developmental justice, meaning that when you mobilize society's resources to increase the national cake, you build in a process of distribution that would favor social justice. There is a sea of difference between the two cases. Now, why don't we do that? Well, because this country is currently run by the mercantile class. mercantile class represented by Ahmed Al-Wakil, who heads the Federation of Traders in this country. And this is the agency that actually dictates the country's economic policy. I know what I'm talking about. So if you do that, then you open the doors completely to importation and to exportation from such items as rice. You deny the poor access to, affordable access to that vital commodity. And the end result is increasing impoverishment. Now, social dynamics, I think, will take care of that by producing counter forces that eventually will correct for that. I can tell you how much frustrated I felt sitting as a cabinet minister in a cabinet that has 33 people strong. And very frequently I found myself on one side and the rest of my colleagues on the other side. What's the political reading of this? The political reading is that the masses that revolted in January did not manage or succeed to bring their representatives to the echelon of power and decision making. And that's the nature of the struggle until now. Okay, let me, because I know time is running out. What is to be done, or the, sorry, about, yeah. The involvement in youth in political parties was mentioned by Sukaina, and I second that. But I would like to say that there are other actors that actually are competing with parties in the scene. If you take NGOs, for example, well, it's much safer to belong to an NGO than to a party, in many ways than one. And sometimes the techniques and procedures are more appealing to the young within the context of an NGO compared to, lastly but not least, is that when you join an NGO, you're more expected to gain some reward. When you join a political party, it's more of a sacrifice. So the end result is that more people are deserting the political scene and opting for others. I don't want to strike a pessimistic note, because I want to tell you that deep down I'm very optimistic. But in the historical sense of the word, meaning that I may not live the day when I see Egypt better, or this part of the world better, but I'm sure that that day will come. Thank you.
I just, before...
No?
Very good. I just want to... just want to note the arrival of one of our guests, Dr. Mohamed Kamal. He teaches at Cairo University and AUC, but Egyptians also around us know that he has been very involved in politics at a certain time. So we will hear from him after the break. I just want to finish, because we have to finish and start our break, by raising 4 points from the discussion that I listened to here. One, the question that has been raised by Ken and has been coming and actually should have been as the basis of the work of SAHWA. Is youth a useful social category to analyze? I expected Dina to give us an answer, because she pioneered the work on youth. But she raised the question of not being monolithic. And that is very important. I can't see the similarity between my students at AUC and young people in the informal sector. في العشوائيات. So, but I was reading a French book actually about la jeunesse en France. And I felt that I was reading some of the stuff that I see in the Arab world. So it seems to me it is a good social unit. Generational analysis is required, but without overgeneralizing and reducing youth to one harmonious monolithic category. So that is the first point. The second point is about the question of policy reform that you raised. And like many of my colleagues here, I feel very frustrated that after 5 years of protests, after 60 years, Karima mentioned that, of revolution in Egypt, problems are still there. They have actually become more acute. And certainly Kamal, when he talked, showed that in Algeria it is the same. Probably in Morocco it is the same. Probably the exception in that region might be the Gulf countries. They have different type of problems. But that is certainly an aspect that is worrying. Number 3, what Mrs. Baz has mentioned, and we haven't discussed that very much in our meeting, the relationship between the outside and the inside. You hear in this part of the world too much about being directed from the outside. When you push it too far, it becomes a sort of superficial conspiracy theory, that everything is directed from the outside. And we are just puppets to be used here and there. I don't think she meant that, but there is certainly a discussion about the relationship between the inside and the outside, especially the youth compared to me or Gouda. They are very globalized. They are people who are connected with outside. So that relationship is very important. Number 4, what Sukaina has mentioned is that Arab societies are youthful societies. The majority of the population is young, 2/3, compared to other countries which I have seen, which are aging societies. The demographic pyramid is just the opposite. What does that mean for the Mediterranean? As a political scientist and thinking of the young as usually rebellious, putting things in doubt, what Saad said about always when you are young, you are leftist. If the young are rebellious, if they are protesting, and if they are the majority of the Mediterranean societies, for me as a political scientist, the conclusion is clear. You are coming into a period of instability. Majority of the population are not happy, problems are accumulating, then you might have, as Kamal said, and I agree, a continuation of the Arab Spring. So we better be prepared unless we want to carry out and immediately a program of policy reform. Otherwise, we will be talking about some of these aspects the next time we meet. With that, perhaps I'll ask you to have the...
Can I just one?
Sure. You will have the last word, my friend.
No, not that. It's because Bahgat said that perhaps the situation in the Gulf is different. I would like to tell you, I just came from a regional meeting, and I was astonished to listen to a young Saudi, okay, who said, don't be fooled by appearances. And the situation is very, very unstable. And actually, instability, not in the horizon, but could be around the corner. So these are not my words, but the word of a young Saudi.
Okay. That's certainly, I mean, like you, I go to the Gulf very often, I meet young people. Their concerns are different. They don't have the economic concerns. People here are fighting economically for survival. They don't have that aspect. Now, it is interesting that the Arab Spring has been focused on the republics, not the kingdoms. I mean, this is a fact. And sometimes we raise the question, has it been good to be a king? But certainly, the Gulf has solved, in a sense, the economic problem. How much priority will the political aspect be as a level? In the rest of the Arab world, you have the economic problem and you have the political problem. And this is why this area is really boiling, I would say. With that, I invite you to have your tea break. Thank you. And I want to thank, obviously, my colleague here.